Testing. 1, 2, 3. A,
Perfect.
B, C,
Okay.
D, E, F, G.
Well, that'll be the whole actually interview. We'll just have you do the ABC.
You want me to sing it all?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Good luck.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break, episode 59, a nuclear reaction. Nukes, how are you doing? Thank you so much for being here.
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, before we get started, because there's a lot to get to, but I do got to ask you about your name, because my parents growing up made it such a clear point to me. It is nuclear, not nuclear. And so ingrained in my head is that I'm saying it incorrectly. How did you come up with your name? That's such a great one.
So actually, I don't even know how, but I had a nickname as a kid as Nukes. I like to think it's because I have like an explosive personality, but maybe it could be other reasons. So I always wanted to like incorporate that in like my username when I made one. And of course, the correct spelling of nuclear nukes is kind of always taken. So I decided let's like jazz it up a little bit. I get told all the time that's not how you spell nuclear, but
that annoys me. I just hear my mom in my ear. What are you saying? And I'm like, well, that's the way she spells her screen name, so that's what I'm going to use for now on. Now. So cool. Well, there's so many things to get to, but I always like to start. Let's first start with kind of like your introduction to gaming. How did you get into gaming? What was it like? What were you playing as a kid? That kind of stuff.
So honestly, one of my earliest memories was playing Super Mario Brothers 2, just kind of running around the first level, not throwing turnips and stuff, not really doing much because I was a 2-year-old. My mom was actually the one who got me into gaming. She played a lot of games when I was a kid. So like back before I, watched speedrunners and was like amazed by what speedrunners could do, I'd watch my mom play Super Mario Brothers 3. And as a toddler, I couldn't get past the first level. And I was like, just like amazed watching her go through the like lava levels and everything. And I'm like, she's so incredible.
I can't believe your mom played. That might be the first person I've ever heard that said their mom played SMB3. That's amazing. And she could actually beat levels.
Yes.
That is so cool. Wow. So was there ever a point where you actually give SMB3 a try and see what you can?
I actually beat it for the first time a couple months ago.
Oh, dang.
That was something I think I just like that and all the Super Mario Brothers games I had like kind of instilled with me these memories of not being able to do it. But then I kind of realized recently, I was like, well, yeah, you were 3 years old. Of course you couldn't do it. So I finally went back and fought that whole series this past year.
I don't know if you've ever had this thought process when you're playing these games, because I'm doing something similar where I'm going back to games that I couldn't beat as a kid because, once again, you're 5 or 3 or whatever. It's interesting. I struggle with some things. You mentioned SMB 2 and 3. Contra has been a real challenge for me. Sometimes it takes me over 10 hours to like beat a Contra game. I'm not sorry, not Contra, Castlevania. And
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like wondering what developers were thinking. Like if this was made for kids, like it seems nearly impossible. I've never met a 5-year-old who could do it.
Yeah, and that's like you sit back with those games, you're like, I just kept telling myself, I'm like, it was a different era. They were trying to like extend the life of the game. Like it's actually, those games are so short if you know what you're doing. Right. But yeah,
yes.
but there's certain things like, yeah, and when I did SMB2, you get to like the final level. That's hard. That is difficult.
Yes.
That frog at the end and everything to get to the frog.
It's kind of wild to me still today, like how much Mario games get more challenging. SMB3 might be a little bit different, but like SMB2 specifically, like the last level and the last boss, totally different than the entire game. Like the difficulty just totally spikes.
Yes.
So, I don't know what they were thinking, but I guess maybe they didn't want you to finish the game. I don't know. When did you, I've been noticing you actually since you've been streaming, I think you've played a lot of Zelda Ocarina of Time and other randomizers. When did you start getting into Zelda and playing through some of those games?
That was, so like, again, back when I was a kid, the first Zelda game I actually played was Ocarina of Time. And that was, again, one that I kind of shared with my mom where I could do, like, the Deku Tree, a little bit of Jabu Jabu and Dodongo's Cavern. But then as soon as you go adult, everything was too scary for me as a little kid. Like, you got the re-dead. As soon as you go adult, it's like, I put the Master Sword back away, and then I was like, yay, let's go play with the Cuckoos. Like, so that's always been, that was a series I definitely fell in love with as a kid. So it was fun. I think, like, I watched Spike and I Ate Your Pie doing a lot of Ocarina of Time Randomizer when that came out, so it kind of re-sparked that love I've had for Zelda, and kind of refreshing that for me. So it's been just really, I don't know, I love the Zelda series.
No, I'm right there with you. It's my favorite games of all time are the Zelda games as well. Even though I don't speedrun any of them, they're a wonderful series of games, and I've probably done way too many episodes on Zelda at this point. This podcast. Not to distract us, but I'm loving all of the nukes bobble in the chat right now.
Yes.
It just makes the chat so much fun. This is great. Very cool. So, you mentioned it briefly, but so when did you kind of like discover this world of like speedrunning retro stuff? Because I know that's for many of us, that's kind of our gateway back into the retro type of games and stuff that we played as a kid. I'm curious, what's kind of your experience with it?
Back in like 2014, I had a friend, it was like probably would have been like December 2013, actually. A friend was like, hey, have you seen this? Someone can beat Ocarina of Time in 20 minutes. And I was like, no way. That doesn't even make sense. How can you get to Ganon in 20 minutes? Like, that's complete BS. And they're like, no, watch this video. So we pulled up that old video of Narcissa doing it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what is this wizardry? What? Me being, as I mentioned before, a kid who watched my mom play it and be like amazed at SMB3 was like, these people are incredible with these games I grew up with. And that was actually kind of the next one I got into, was watching a lot of Mitch Flower Power destroy SMB3 and being like, I thought my mom was good. Like, this guy is insane. So that was, and once I started watching that, my friends were like, did you know there's an event that's just doing these games fast? And I was like, there's like a whole event around this? And they're like, yeah, it actually is in like a week. It's called Awesome Games Done Quick. I binged AGDQ. All of a sudden, like, I do the thing where like, you just like, you hone in on something and you're obsessed with it and that's all you're consuming. That's what I did with speedrunning. To the point where my friend was like, I regret showing you that OOT run because this is all you talk about now.
Okay, I am right there with you. When I first, and it's so funny you mentioned Mitch because he's one of the first people I saw do it too. SMB3, because it's a game, I grew up with. It sounds like you grew up with as well. Mm-hmm. And it's I don't understand people who don't end up binging because it's like you get, especially with thank you YouTube algorithm, it recommends the next speedrunning video. Mm-hmm. So now it's like you're on crack, and it's I just have to keep clicking. But I totally agree that it's something that I had the same experience where I just decided to become obsessed with it, and the content nowadays it almost seems endless. But even back then, I was around the same time, about 14, 15, and that's really cool. Did that lead you to even consider trying some of these things, or at least get back into playing those games?
I always wanted to. I considered like learning Paper Mario a long time ago. And then that game became the mess that it is today. If you're familiar, anyone who's familiar with that speed run knows that that's just a joy to run. But I didn't really do actual like speed running-esque stuff until I got into randomizers. I think the timing was never right when I wanted to do it. I was kind of, when I was at the height of being like interested in just straight speed running, I was working 3 jobs. So I just like didn't have the time commitment. And if you're like a speedrunner, you know the amount of time that kind of goes into learning the runs, practicing the runs, doing runs. It's a big commitment.
Yes, totally agree. And that was actually going to be my next question. I was wondering, as you're growing up, you're becoming an adult, or all these kind of things, did you still have any time for like gaming before you started streaming or anything like that?
I had very little time. I was good with so I'm really a big fan of the Binding of Isaac series.
Oh yeah, cool.
And I think big reason with it. I love roguelikes. But like you can pick up do a run in 30 minutes and then put it down. There's no like needing to remember, okay, what was I doing last time? Like I'm also a big fan of RPGs, but I feel like those, that takes a lot more time to kind of get going. So there's a lot of games that during like my college years and early adulthood, I just like didn't have time to commit to those.
Yeah.
But games like Binding of Isaac, I was like, yeah, I can fit in 30 minutes tonight before I go to bed.
That's the thing I've been hearing a lot of, and I have yet to really jump into a lot of roguelikes myself, and I really need to, because hearing people talk about that, like if you only have like a quick half an hour, I still have a day job, so time is precious, and so
yes.
That being able to do a run in an hour or something like that actually seems like a really great way to still get a good experience in a game you like.
Yes, that definitely fed into that. Like it was satisfying because you could get through a whole run and not feel like, oh, well, I started this. But...
Right. Right. Didn't have to play a 20 or 40 hour RPG or anything like that. Okay. So when did you start streaming and what led you down that road?
Okay. AGDQ 2016 was the first AGDQ I ever attended. And at that point, I've never thought about streaming, I was just like really immersed, as I said, in like the speed running world and just amazed by it all. And then some friends I made there, they were, I kept getting asked by people like, oh, what do you stream? What do you speed run? Yes. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm just love it. I don't know. And they're like, you should try streaming. You should try streaming. So at like the summer 2016, I did some streaming. I did Undertale, which is not a recommended game to do for the first time blindly on stream, but I did.
Oh, damn.
And then I did a lot of Binding of Isaac because again, it was a game I knew a lot about, so I could talk about and explain what I was doing and why. But also I could do small chunks, like stream for like a couple hours, and it'd be satisfying. But again, that was during that time period where I was working 3 jobs, so it kind of just got too much to stream while I was working 3 jobs, and it was like came home and I was exhausted and I wanted to stream, but it was not the right timing. So it wasn't again until I started dating Spike, and he moved in with me, and I had been like kind of like saying to him, I was like, I kind of want to stream again. I really liked when I streamed. I kind of want to stream again. And he went out of town for RPG Limit Break for a week. And I said to him, okay, I'm going to stream on your PC while you're gone, because you're going to be gone.
Yeah, you're not going to use it.
And now I've been streaming regularly ever since.
That is so cool. Since you mentioned him, I do have to mention Spike just very briefly, because he's actually basically one of the reasons that this whole podcast exists. He was on very early on. So I think it was a GDQ, and I can't remember if it was 18 or 19, but it was somewhere around there. And he was nice enough to have me on for an interview for one of the GDQ runs. And before we were even live or whatever, we were just chatting, shooting the breeze about life and stuff like that. And hearing he had mentioned you at this time, you were his fiance, and we just started like talking about things outside of speedrunning, and it got me thinking like, man, I think there's got to be a lot of everyone's got to have like a story like this. And I really enjoyed just talking with him. And I was like, why can't that be like a thing? So I just started asking people to do it. And he's really, I'm thankful that we had that conversation, because like all of us have these really, everyone has a different course or story getting into wherever they're doing right now, whether it's speedrunning or streaming or content creation. There's all these different sorts of avenues, especially around retro games and all these kind of things. So I'm thankful to him.
And now you're here. Now you're here chatting to me on your podcast.
Exactly.
About the conversation you had with Spike.
Yes, it's all meta. It's just so very meta. But it just blows my mind. Like, and at the time, I didn't put 2 and 2 together and all these things. And I think maybe you had just started streaming at that time, because he mentioned that his fiance streamed. And I didn't really know much, or there's still very much I don't know about streaming. I'm very bad at it, and I try to do what I can. But that's so cool that him just taking off for a week kind of led you into actually doing the thing full time. I was like, your audience needs to watch Zooter. They need more
So
randomizer.
I'll provide that content.
Well, speaking of that, do you even remember the first time you tried a Zelda randomizer or Ocarina of Time randomizer?
Again, Spike, when we started
There you go.
dating, like literally, I don't think we were even officially dating yet, but he was like, "You need an EverDrive so you can do randomizers." And I was like, "Well, I'm interested, but I don't know. Like, you guys are really good." And he's like, "You'll be fine. Here." And then he got me an EverDrive, and I did my first couple seeds, trudged through them, took like 13 hours. Now I'm grinding them out in about 3 hours, but.
That's okay. I got to bring up just another personal story real quick because recently my wife really doesn't play any video games at all. But recently we were on a plane. We actually flew somewhere crazy. I know, crazy speaking. We actually flew somewhere, but she had the same thing where she wanted to play Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers, because that was the game she remembered playing as a kid. And it's so interesting how I think that has to have something in our brain, or the nostalgia part of it, right? Where it just like captures something of reminding us. Did you enjoy it? I mean, obviously you must have if you're still playing the game, but what was it about it that hooked you on it?
I just like how it took a game that I have, as you said, that like nostalgia. There's something that definitely like feeds you good feelings when you play those things that you just enjoyed as a kid. So having that, but like it be, this kind of ties into me being a fan of roguelikes, where I like how it's a different experience every time, but it's kind of the same thing. Binding of Isaac is very based off of Zelda, if you didn't know that, the original Zelda. So it kind of collided two worlds for me, where I'm like, I'm a fan of Zelda, I'm a fan of roguelikes, where it's like every time you play, it's a different experience, but the same base. And it just keeps it fresh. So it was just everything I loved about gaming in one package for me.
That's so cool. If anybody's watching this on the video right now is actually a randomizer I'd never seen before until I saw it on your stream, which is the Moo randomizer, where you you find pieces of Triforce in cows. It's kind of wild, actually. If you haven't seen it, it's really fun. Now, as you're playing randomizers, because especially with Zooter, I'm very easy logic. Anytime you get some more challenging, have you tried challenging yourself with some of the more like the harder versions of the randomizer and everything?
I've done what we like to call a hell sanity, where just you randomize everything. So like every time you load a new entrance, it's not like you could go into the like entrance to Lake Hylia and you're in Goron City. So you have to kind of make your own map. As you mentioned before, cows give you prizes when you play Epona song for them. You enter a grotto, and that could actually be a fairy fountain. All the Deku scrubs everywhere, they can sell you items. The shops sell you items. So there's definitely varying degrees that you can do, which is another thing I really like about randomizers, because it's so customizable. You could be somebody who's playing it for the first time, and you can be like, oh, I don't like horseback archery, so we're not going to make that a check. And you can keep it just very basic. Or you could be someone like me who's plays these like daily. And you're like, I need a challenge. We need to make this like very, very difficult and the logic very confusing. Let's just shuffle it all.
You know, I'm curious. So Ocarina of Time is like basically my favorite video game of all time. Have you ever gone back and actually played the vanilla version after doing all of these different randomizers and stuff? And is it still any good? Like, do you get any? Is it still fun?
I actually last year did a Zeldathon, where I played through every mainline Zelda game and also Wanda Gamelon. I played through them all like when they were released in release order. So one of the things I didn't do the vanilla, like the N64 Ocarina of Time, but I did the 3D version because I had never played that, and it was you can't play it. I don't know, like it's I had to still do like skips and stuff that I normally do, and like you can't play it without like the skips, I feel like, because I'm like, oh, well, like, I can do this trick to get into here early or get this
Right.
chest early. So why not?
Yeah, totally agree. And that's I guess that's the part where you can't leave behind your toolbox. You have to use the things
Yeah.
you've learned how to do, even in a casual playthrough. That's cool. Have you ever done any? Have you ever tried Majora's Mask or any of the other randomizers around 3D Zelda games?
Oh, I not Majora's Mask, but I actually yesterday started my first ever Wind Waker
Oh, cool.
randomizer, which has been really fun. I don't really know much about like strats and stuff for
Yeah.
Wind Waker. I know there's like super swims, but that's something that
If you don't mind me asking, I've been wanting to try the Wind Waker randomizer. Do you have to do it on emulator? Are you able to use it on like a Wii or anything, or how does that even work?
there's ways if you have like a homebrew Wii, I
Gotcha.
know,
Okay.
which is something that I don't use. So I do it on Dolphin,
Oh,
but
cool. Okay. I love Dolphin.
yeah,
It's great.
it's that's like I think kind of the easiest way to do it. Yeah.
Cool. So, have you played through I assume at this point, have you played through Wind Waker casually though? You played through the playthrough of that?
That's actually my, you'd think that Ocarina of Time would be my favorite Zelda game, but I think my favorite is Wind Waker, which is why I wanted to give it a try.
Yeah, it's so good. I love it. That's real close for me. It's very close between Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker. Such a good game.
I know, I feel like people are either like, they love Wind Waker or they're like, oh, like I don't like how it looks. I don't, no. But I think there's a lot of neat little things that are kind of overlooked in that game. Like, that's the first game where you can pick up like the weapons from the enemies in the game and utilize it. And I was like, oh, this is kind of like almost a look into Breath of the Wild and stuff, being able to use different weapons that are not like exclusive to Link.
I totally agree. And one of the things I know it's not for everybody, but I really feel like the art style is kind of timeless of it. Like you can play it today and it still looks and feels very modern in my opinion. So
Yeah,
I think it's kind of cool.
I agree.
Okay, cool. I honestly, we could talk Zelda all day. No kidding. I'm always a fan of the series. Still love it today. But one of the reasons that I actually, probably the biggest reason I asked you on is because of your fundraising efforts and something you're going to be doing very soon. And that's in the type 1 diabetes. And I guess, first of all, there's so many questions I have, but let's first, why don't you, if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about your story and why you end up where you are today fundraising for type 1.
So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 8 years old. So big majority of my life, I've been dealing with type 1 diabetes. And even as a kid, we would do a Jdrf, which is the charity that we fundraise for, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. We did, they have like these walk for a cure events. So as a kid, we would do those. My mom would be like, all right, we're going to raise some money. Go ask your family members, go ask people if they can donate. And we would do that. So that was kind of something I just have always done. And then now that I'm streaming, you realize, that's like, I'm big involved, obviously, with like Games Done Quick. It's like, well, why don't I utilize my stream to raise money for diabetes as well?
Absolutely. If you can, what makes type 1 a little bit different than some of the other types of diabetes for those that may not be aware?
There's a couple different types. I think a lot of people, if you don't know much about diabetes, you probably default think of like, oh, you get diabetes because you eat too much sugar or you're overweight. But there's like 3 different types. Type 1 is an autoimmune disease that often occurs in children. That's kind of usually when it's diagnosed, but not exclusively. And so type 1 is when your body literally attacks your pancreas, which is the organ that produces insulin in your body and maintains your blood sugar levels. Very, very important, because if your blood sugar levels are out of whack, you can very easily go into a coma and pass away from that. So if it's not controlled, it's very, very immediately dangerous. So with type 1 diabetics, our pancreases no longer work. They no longer produce insulin. So we have to manually inject insulin to us for every meal, and then just like maintain our blood sugar levels through like typically finger pokes. That's like the main thing. If you're wondering then too, like, what are the other types then? Type 2 is then maybe what you normally think of, like where it typically occurs in people who are overweight, and that's because your body is still producing, your pancreas is still working, producing insulin, but your body can't absorb that insulin. So that's usually maintained diet-wise so that you can kind of get your body to be more sensitive to insulin again.
Oh, there you go. JDR for the chat. Type 1 autoimmune.
There we go. Yeah.
And type 2 is metabolic. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yes. So that's that is definitely the big difference. And then we also talk about I mentioned there's a third type, and that's typically appears in pregnant women, or sorry, I should say people who are pregnant. And that's, again, I think that I'm not super familiar with that one, unfortunately, but I think it's pretty similar. And JDRF can probably clarify here in chat. But I think that's kind of similar to being like a metabolic type thing.
Gestational. There we go. Okay.
Diabetes. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good way to put it. So just a full disclosure here, I've done some work for JDRF, but I'm still now years, my wife and I have been donating to their causes over here in the local area. For those that aren't too familiar with JDRF, they have local chapters and stuff, and that's so you can, if you're looking for an event or some sort of fundraising efforts locally to you, can find that as well. And I was producing some content on a story for a little girl who was, I think she was 8 or 9 years old, but she had, I'm not sure if this is typical or if this is something that happens occasionally, but she had to get her blood checked. Gosh, how often was she testing? It was every few hours, it seemed like. So while she's at school, she has to get tested. In the middle of the night, she has to be woken up and get tested. Is that something that you had to experience? And that does not sound like a lot of fun, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's like life with diabetes. That's I think people don't realize how intense life with diabetes is, because you're constantly like, okay, everything you eat impacts your blood sugar. If you don't eat, it impacts your blood sugar. If you exercise, it impacts your blood sugar. Jeez. If you're stressed, if you're not exercising, if you're sick, all these things impact your levels. You have to manually maintain, or else, as I mentioned earlier, you can have very dangerous consequences. Thankfully, we live in a world where things are becoming a little more easier to maintain. And you don't have to maybe do everything manually. I'm actually going to be trying out soon, and this is becoming more mainstream, something called a constant glucose monitor, where it's literally like a thing you implant under your skin. Wow. And it constantly reads your blood sugar levels, so you don't have to do those finger pokes every few hours to make sure you're still good. And it's just like, it literally goes, it's like an app on your phone. Yeah. And you just look at it and you can see right away. It can send you alerts if your blood sugar is going too high or too low. So you can address it before it becomes a problem. So thankfully, we are kind of moving on to more stuff like that. That makes it a little bit easier, but it's still something that is kind of, I think, as a diabetic, it's at the forefront of your mind with everything you do.
So I guess the obvious question then, is there a cure at this point? Is there a way that you'll ever have to, at this point, to not deal with this?
Not at this point. It's funny because they told me when I got diagnosed, they were like, oh yeah, I bet by the time you're an adult, there should be a cure. We're so close. And that's what we've been hearing for years they are very, very close to finding a cure, which would be huge for so many people. I know that I don't know the exact numbers, but diabetes is definitely one of the more common chronic diseases that people deal with. So if we could find a cure, which donating to places like JDRF definitely helps with that research to get done. So that's again a big reason why I do this fundraising, because I know it will help people like me who experience this day to day, potentially be able to live life without diabetes at some point.
So why do you choose JDRF? I've just, that's because of my contact with them working wise, that's what led me down the path. I'm curious why you ended up choosing to support their causes and their efforts. So not only do they deal with like
research, funding research. But they also, a part of JDRF is helping families adjust to life with diabetes. So when I was a kid and I got diagnosed, one of the things I got was a little care package from JDRF. And it was like this is the big thing that I always has stuck with me is they have a little teddy bear named Rufus. And he comes with little like pads on his hands and his arms and his stomachs. And it's designed for kids who are diabetic to practice giving like insulin shots onto their little diabetic bear buddy. So it kind of like is almost like a form of comfort and you don't feel maybe so alone during that time. So that was like a big thing, honestly, that helped me as a kid. And also my parents get learn how to do things too when I was first diagnosed. So they've had like a direct impact on my transition to life as a diabetic.
That's one of the things that really stuck out to me about JDRF. The research, super important. Like, this is why we need to raise money for this. Like, we don't get to a cure without research. And in addition to that, the idea that when you get diagnosed, that there's information and things available for you. That really, I remember. So I'm here in Southern California, and one of the pieces that I had produced content for, they had mentioned like when they got diagnosed at the hospital, immediately, nearly immediately, there were resources they could get to thanks to JDRF about how to.
Yes.
It's terrible that a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old has to worry about that, but at the same time, at least we have some experience now, and JDRF is making that possible. That information and being available. I wonder if did you? I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say it's such a big adjustment too, as I mentioned, like. That's as a diabetic, that's you're every day constantly thinking about what you're doing is impacting your diabetes and how to keep your numbers in control. So it is a big to go from at any age, but especially at an age where you've had years without diabetes to all of a sudden take this big change. And if you're going into it blindly without that help and information, I couldn't imagine being as well controlled in my diabetes as I am today if I didn't have those resources.
You mentioned the transition. As you get older, one of the things I don't really have any knowledge or experience about at all, does it change as you get older? Like, does you're dealing with it, or does your body, is there any sort of, I guess, does it change? Does your diabetes change as you get older?
Definitely. There's, I know so we kind of insulin doses you do on base a carb ratio. So you see how many grams of carbs you're eating, and so many. Okay, for me, I'm going to eat this many grams of carbs. I take a unit of insulin for every 8 grams of carbs. So I know this is how much insulin I'm going to take. But that ratio kind of can change as you get older or have had diabetes for longer. A lot of newly diagnosed diabetics don't have to take as much insulin because their body might still actually be producing a little bit of insulin. But that will change as you progress through the years and have had diabetes for longer. There's also things to worry about too, like diabetes can impact things like your vision, your feet, where people often have to have, if they don't have controlled diabetes, they can go blind. They can have to have their feet amputated. So it's important also to, as you get older, continue to monitor all of those things as well to make sure you're still healthy in every other aspect of your being too.
I think all of this really highlights why it's so important to raise money for this cause and to try to support it any way that if you're able to support, do this. If you wouldn't mind touching on a little bit of the nuts and bolts about fundraising. Typically, us speedrunners, we look for our marathons that are supporting a charity, and that's one of the ways we do it. I think it's so awesome that you're taking this upon yourself to do your own thing and to ask your community to help support you and all these kind of things. How do you go about running your own charity event on your own stream?
Well, this is so this one I'm doing right now, JDRF actually has gotten more involved with streaming and raising money through gaming. So the event I'm doing tomorrow is actually JDRF's event, what is it? Game Over Type 1 Diabetes. I always forget the exact name.
I should have had that up. Dang it. I'll put
But
a link in the chat.
Yeah, it's Game Over Type 1 Diabetes. So they do an event every August. It's a week-long event, so I kind of pick a day to do my stream for it. So I've kind of have gone off of them for when I do the fundraising stuff, but in the past I've done my own. The first fundraiser I did for JDRF, which was actually how they got in touch with me and was like, hey, do you know that we do stuff with streamers? You should get involved with our community. They have like a whole Discord and everything.
Oh, cool.
But Spike and I, last year we were supposed to get married, but
thanks, quarantine.
Thanks to COVID, that kind of got canceled. So Spike and I ended up doing our own thing where we read our vows to each other on stream and kind of had like a wedding of a sort that was not a legal wedding, but like, we did a cake, we did vows, everything on stream. But I said before we did that, I was like, I don't want people to, I think sometimes as a streamer, you worry that someone's going to look at you doing something like that as like, oh, they're trying to like cash grab or something. And that's like something I think as a full-time streamer, you like worry about. You don't want to ever give off that kind of impression. So I suggested, I was like, why don't we ask people, to donate to a charity that's like meaningful to us? And immediately I was like, JDRF, let's just ask them if they feel like they want to gift us something for our little wedding event on Twitch, direct them to JDRF instead. So we set up a Tiltify campaign and all the money went to JDRF from that event.
It's actually where I became aware of your support of JDRF, and I should have known this earlier. But first of all, I can't believe anybody would think that about the wedding stream, because I just thought it was the most adorable thing ever. But but it was so cool. Anyway, but and I thought that was such a great idea to associate something like that. I mean, in speedrunning, we have the model. We speedrun and then we attach on this charity we're going to support, and I think that's such a great and it's such a good way to help support. You can find fun ways to do it, and now you're continuing to do it.
Yes.
What exactly is this Game Over Type 1 Diabetes? Can you tell us a little bit about the event?
So it's a week-long event that JDRF runs. We have there's like a whole schedule, and I wish I had these links.
I just put it in the chat,
now.
So it's /JDRF.org/gaming.
So on there they have a schedule of all the different streamers who are going to be raising money for this event. They're actually promoting, they're doing like this weekend, they're going to double any donations. So if you come tomorrow, so Saturday, tomorrow, the 14th, Spike and I will be doing a Zooter crowd control where all the money will go towards JDRF, but it will also be doubled this weekend. So if let's say you can only do $5, which any bit of money helps.
That's huge.
But all of a sudden, your $5 is $10. If you can spare $100, all of a sudden that's $200 towards the cure. So
that's something that is so important, that there is no insignificant amount of money you can donate. Especially, I mean, if there were 100 people watching and everybody donated $1, think about how much that multiplies. And now you're mentioning that it's doubled and things like that. I just think that having that mentality is such the right way to do it. Okay, JDRF has sent the link. I'm putting that into the chat as well. Awesome. Where can we watch, I'll put all these links in the description and also in the podcast description, but where is it going to be on your channel, Spike? Where can we watch?
Both Spike and I will be streaming it tomorrow. So either of our Twitch channels, we will have all the links on there to donate. The great thing, I know I mentioned doing crowd control, which for those there might be people not familiar with crowd control. That's like an extension that you can kind of impact the game that the person's playing with like different fun things. Like you could reverse our controls. You could just immediately kill the player. You could shrink Link to be really, really tiny. You can make him go super fast. But all of that is controlled through donations. So you'll exchange donations for coins to impact the game.
If you've ever wanted to troll nukes, now's the time. That is crowd control.
So we will be actually, like, Spike and I will be racing it too. So if you want to be Team Nukes, you can go troll Spike and slow him down.
Team Nukes Hut. No, it's so cool. Do y'all have, I mean, when you do something like this and it's with a group and a big organization, do you have a fundraising goal in mind, or is this just one of the things like we will, any little bit help type of thing?
We do have a goal, or like we try to pick a goal to kind of go towards every time we do one of these events. Our goal for tomorrow is $5,000.
Nice.
But we try to, and I think, JDRF said they have a big goal in mind for the total event. $75,000 total is for their event overall through all the streamers doing this. For our own stream, we'll be doing like milestones, like little rewards that happen throughout. And so we'll actually be giving away tomorrow a couple cool products by X-Rocker. They've been kind enough to donate some of the streamers headsets and gaming chairs to give away. So we'll be at different milestones doing giveaways. So if you want to come stop by, no donation is necessary to be a part of that. But the donations will help us reach the giveaway. So definitely encourage coming and checking that out as well.
I think it's also important that if you, let's say you find this podcast a few days down the line and you're not here to support Nukes on Saturday, which is totally understandable. This cause doesn't end, and it needs it needs support whenever is possible. So if it's something that you are willing and able to do and you want to donate and things like that, I am assuming these links will still be good for a while. Yes. So you could keep donating.
Yeah. Okay, cool. As I said, this event is actually going to be through the whole week. So cool. Today was the kickoff of the event. So there are streamers today doing their streams for JDRF. But I will have the links up on my Twitter.
Okay, cool. Very
which is Nuclear Reaction minus the underscore minus one of the R's in reaction. So if you want to go there, there will be a link there that you can donate through on Tiltify. So you don't have to do it through crowd control either. Can just go do a direct link. I want to go ahead and I should give you that link as well. Please, if you want to post that somewhere.
It'll be all in the description. So on the YouTube or on the podcast, either one, you can click through there, and it's a really great way to support this important cause. So. This is really
and as
cool.
I said, any donations help too. Like if you can only donate $1, it will be doubled, and it will all, every single person, as Matt said too, it all adds up.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you all taking the time and even considering this, because as much as it's a cause near and dear to Nukes and my heart, it's helpful to get the word out. And this may be, you'd be surprised. You probably know somebody who has been, who has type 1 diabetes. It's out there a lot more than you may know, and it needs help so that we can, this is how we move forward. This is how we get closer to a cure. This is how we get closer to, if it's even, those type of things. So. Nukes, thank you so much for your own personal gaming streaming. What is coming up for? What are you doing? What would you like to do with your stream coming up into the future?
I'm right now mostly still grinding out Ocarina of Time randomizers. So if you're a big Zelda fan, if you like to see it shaken up a little bit, that's mainly what I do. As I mentioned earlier, I'm starting to dip into the waters of Wind Waker randomizer as well. But I also do like some other like fun casual things too. I have an incentive for a Metroid marathon where I'm going to play through a bunch of Metroid games, cool. Which is a series I've never played a single Metroid game. So that's also some other, I mostly do Nintendo, but other stuff coming up on my stream.
One of my favorite things when I'm doing research on a guest coming onto the podcast is check out their clips and what has their community enjoyed the most. And by far, you and Spike in a hot tub with spaghetti was very high. How the hell did you end up in a tub in spaghetti?
That was a JDRF incentive for
sweet.
a previous JDRF charity. Yeah, I said if we raised so much money, I'd fill a kiddie pool up with spaghetti, and that happened.
Does it feel
Sat
weird?
there on stream,
Come on,
boiling spaghetti for 3 hours to fill up that pool.
I was going to wonder, how did you get all that pasta? Yeah, that was not an insignificant amount of pasta in there.
It was 30 boxes of spaghetti.
Oh my God. Did you eat any of it?
A little bit that was not in the pool.
Yeah.
Filled with our...
Thank you. Okay, good. I'm glad. Oh, it's kind of gross. So cool. Well, if you're looking for that kind of content, folks, follow Nuclear Reaction.
You like your gamers a little saucy and in spaghetti.
You know where you can find it. Just to let people know, where can people find you on Twitch? Because you mentioned your Twitter account. I'll link to all this stuff, but where's the best place to find you on Twitch?
Twitch is nuclear_reaction. Spelled the funky way, NUKKULAR.
And if you are listening or watching this and it's August 13th through August 19th, somewhere around that, go right now. Go check out Nuke and Nuke's stream and all the links, and I'll have them all in the description. Please go help and support JDRF. We're trying to raise $75,000 over the course of a week, so please come on and help out. It'll be fun. Nukes, thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it, and hopefully we can raise some money this week. Yes,
thanks for having me.
Thanks everyone for listening, watching, viewing, liking, subscribing, and sharing. All of that stuff goes a long way to helping out the podcast. If you'd like any additional info, you can go to sequencebreakpodcast.com. All of our past episodes, everything's on there. You'll find everything there. If you'd like to watch live, follow the Sequence Break Twitter. That is Sequence Break PC, and you can join in, ask some questions, watch the whole thing live. It does happen. It's not really a set time, but I do post when I go live. Everything else, if you have any questions or anything like that, podcast@sequencebreakpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.